So the history of the Light Church starts way before September 13th, 2015.
So we were in Newton in Southeast Texas.
We were happy. We loved where God had us at that time, and the ministry was fantastic, and we were making these relationships with these students. And
We were happy. We saw ourselves in Newton for a long time.
God began to just work on my life and tell me something that I really didn't want to hear, and that was that He wanted me to begin a church.
Josh, came to me and told me about the vision that he had to start a church. And at first, I wasn't really on board because, like I said, we were happy where we were at. We really did see ourselves there for a while.
And through the next several months, He made it clear He wanted me to go back to my hometown, back here to Jacksboro, and to start a church. And so what we did was, in January, the year before we started the Light, in September, we started deciding what kind of a church that God was leading us to start.
It was a couple days after New Year's. It was really a cold day. We were out in the shop out at my parents', just talking. It was in January. I think it was like January 8th. I actually remember that day in my head.
Josh and Megan and I, we met in January and started coming together and talking about the type of church that we all kind of had envisioned.
We just all of a sudden started tossing around ideas that both of us had always had and Brittany had, and we just thought it would be really cool to start a church.
Brittany and Megan and myself, what we did was we decided that we would go to other churches in the area.
We would go, to the Metroplex, go to churches, in a surrounding distance around Jacksboro.
So during that, we visited churches because we had never really experienced what it was like to be a new member of a church.
We would shove the kids in their children's ministry and tell the kids like spies, like scouting out Jericho. We'd be like, tell us what you loved about it.
At that time, it was mainly Megan who had kids, and we would go and have her check her kids in and kind of see the process of what we liked and what we didn't like. And we definitely knew that kids ministry was also heavy on our hearts, and we wanted to have a church that had lots of kids.
And after visiting these churches, we knew kind of a theme and a vision that we had, and that vision was just to reach the lost, to be an active, growing, loving church that loved people, and also a church that was just living out Jesus' calling.
We began to put everything together, and we completely underestimated how much work that it was going to be to even get it going. What was crazy is we had no clue how to start a church.
So we started ordering things, and at the time we didn't have a location. We were mobile, and so we started. My living room was the storage unit, was the church location for the church. We were getting several packages a day.
For like weeks beforehand, I'd see boxes just stacked up on Josh and Britt's porch, and we literally had to store everything in their living room for a couple of months. But when we started getting closer to launch, we needed to, run through this because we literally had boxes and boxes in just a trailer full.
Josh had to get everything out, so there was just lights going everywhere and equipment, and it was fun.
We put this portable church together out at the activity center out in Jacksboro, and
it was several weeks that we would just meet up at the activity center and try to get everything unboxed and set up. And
we would get there early on a Sunday morning to the Armory or Twin Lakes Activity Center, and it would literally take from like 7, 8 in the morning until like 6, 7 at night to set all this up. And it was the first Sunday we were there, we were ripping everything out of cardboard boxes and just throwing stuff everywhere.
Put a lot of work early on into trying to get our production to where we can move it around easy.
And just moving the stage in, and this was, on a weekly basis. We were loading stuff on and off this trailer and carrying stuff and just setting it up.
We literally would spend 8 to 9 hours starting Sunday morning, setting up our production, getting everything in place. We actually purchased a enclosed cargo trailer to move all the production out to the activity center, and we had to do 2 loads. There was quite a bit.
We spent months advertising this first service because it was, as far as we were concerned, we had one shot to make a bang.
So it finally came down to the time of the first service, which was in the middle of September, and I was very pregnant. We didn't even know if we were going to be at the first service, but we did, thank goodness. And it was an exhausting day.
So Jose, which is my husband now, he invited me to the activity center to help set up for church Sunday night. And he told me it would be about 30 minutes, and it ended up taking 3 hours to set up and 3 hours to take everything down.
So the first service, we were so excited. I know all of us were super nervous, but it was really exciting to see it finally taking place.
We didn't really have a lot going for us when we started, but we had a really awesome band of really talented dudes and ladies, and man, that was kind of that's what we're banking on.
We get up to the start, and people are coming, filing in and coming to sit down, and literally Josh is fixed to go on stage, and the band's about to come on, and we can't even get our words.
We had Ethan was leading worship for us at that time, and just this dynamic dude that a lot of y'all probably don't know because our church was so small when he was here. But man, he was awesome and so talented, and then you had this preacher who was 5 years younger than I am right now, and really had no clue what I was doing, and I had this sermon put together.
The service didn't actually last very long though, because Josh talked really, really fast. So it was over pretty quick. A whole day of setting up for 5 minutes of preaching. No, I'm just playing. It was longer than that.
And it was on the prodigal son, and the amount of notes that I had 5 years ago for that would be equivalent to what I could preach now about a 70 to 80 minute sermon on. It would take me about that long to preach through these notes. And that first night, I preached through that sermon in about 7 minutes. I was so nervous, and
yeah, Josh talked a million miles a minute too.
My dad came up to me after the service, and he was like, Bud, you did great. It's a great message. Next week, try to take a breath, though. And so, about 2 weeks after we started the light, Cora, my oldest daughter, was born, and so I knew every aspect of that setup. But the people who were helping us get started, they knew their own specific part of it, but no one really knew how the whole thing was put together. And so we realized, hey, Brittany and I, we were in the hospital with our baby, so we called an audible.
With as tough as it was doing that production, we realized early on, maybe we don't need to just go as big right from the start. So we kind of toned it down to a smaller, more intimate service up at the courtyard in the bistro.
We minimized our setup a whole lot once we moved there. It was just a really, really neat atmosphere, and I felt like just being outside and worshiping in an outdoor area was really neat, and you could really feel God moving out in that area, and I just thought it was just a really, really neat time in our growth toward where we are now.
And something that I'll never forget about having our service there was that when we first started the church, Ashley Garza had tagged Adam in the first post and said hey Adam, let's go. And like I said, it was the bistro service is probably the 3rd or 4th service, I can't remember the exact date, but they actually showed up to that service, and so that was really neat to see them there. And it was a really cool atmosphere to have it at the bistro. The setup didn't take as long, so that was a plus.
I remember some of the people that came there. I remember Adam and Ashley, they came 5 years ago. Adam and Ashley were coming to the light, at the bistro. And
about that time, we had added a few new members to our band. We had Allison, she played piano, and then we had Hipster Matt and Reese also, they both played guitar and both sang, and we missed them so much. But it was so neat to see everyone starting to come together, and like I said, just worshiping in that atmosphere out there was just, it was so cool. So
Then we began to realize that no matter how nice that it was outside at the bistro, weather was going to begin to change, and it was about to get really cold, and we couldn't do outside services anymore. And by that time, we had pretty much talked ourselves out of doing any kind of huge setup, portable service out at the activity center again.
So we had decided to rent the Pizza Pro building as like a church office, so we would actually have like a home base. Being portable, you don't really have like an actual like permanent domain, so we thought that would be a perfect place to be able to house like a Wednesday night youth plus like our church office.
And I was in there one day in the office, and I was praying, and I was just telling God, you've got to show us a place where we can have services. And I remember praying, and I just remember looking up and seeing this acoustical drop-in ceiling that was there.
I'll never forget, I was sitting at home and Josh calls and was like, hey, what do you think about having our church as like here as at the Pizza Pro as the permanent location for the church?
You know, our church kept growing, and Josh calls one day and says that he's gonna, turn this thing into a sanctuary, and I thought he was crazy.
And I was like, yeah, like is it really gonna work? Like I don't know if that's really gonna kind of fit our style. And he was like, well, I've already ripped out most of it, and I think it's gonna work just great. And I was like, you already ripped it out? He was like, yeah, should probably call Nelson on that, which is the owner of the building.
Little did I know, I arrived to the building and he's already started ripping stuff out.
So I popped it up, and I saw something that looked kind of shiny, and I thought, well, that's strange. So I popped another ceiling tile up, and I began to look, and it was this beautiful old ceiling that was really high and had this huge metal crown molding around the outside of it. And I realized, I was like, man, this is a beautiful old ceiling. And before I knew it, I had ripped this entire ceiling down.
I was amazed though, because like God worked in all the details, because that place looked awesome whenever it got done, being renovated. So many guys put in so much time to turn that place into, what would transition us to where we are now. But I never in a million years would have thought that that place could have housed a church like sanctuary. It's just, it was really neat to see, but I wouldn't have believed it at the time. When he called, I thought, you are crazy. Like, you are literally crazy.
By God's grace that, he kind of introduced us to our first location. It was just a small one-room church at first, and we added a couple classrooms in the back. And, when we actually got into that location there, our services, we were running about 10 to 15 people on a Sunday morning when we switched to morning services. So, here we are 5 years later, and I'm just amazed at the growth this church has seen.